Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. I'm Blythe Eversole, and I'm a Jira Service Desk Product Marketing Manager. I'm here with Amaresh Ray, who's a Senior Product Manager on the team. The two of us have been working together to figure out how to develop and bring to market a modern change management solution. We've done a good deal of research on how teams are delivering value to their customers and doing it quickly, all while minimizing risk. And we thought that some of what we've learned could be especially helpful as all of us are navigating new work routines. Now, there are a lot of ways to describe the events of the past couple of months. And for me, one of the words that comes to mind is disruptive. So we hope we can share some research insights and principles from Atlassian engineering teams that will help you to practice change management with confidence so that you don't stop deploying. We'll kick off the agenda with logistics. Here I'll run through a few housekeeping notes. First, we would love for you to interact with us. Please feel free to submit a question using the Q&A widget in the console. We'll get to as many of the questions as we can during the webinar, and if for some reason we miss yours, we'll be sure to follow up via email. You might also want to check out the resources we've linked for you. There's some good change management content there, as well as links to try Jira Service Desk for free if you haven't already, and a link to access the early access program features we're going to preview later in the webinar. On the technical side of things, we've heard a few occasional reports that the slides and audio have gotten out of sync. If on the rare chance that happens to you, just refresh your browser. And finally, there's no dial-in number for this webinar. It's being streamed through your computer, so for the best audio quality, make sure you've got your headphones turned up or your speakers turned up. Now that we covered those technical details, let's get into it. I'll start by walking through an overview of what we've learned about the current state of change management. And then I'll share 5 principles that are guiding how Atlassian engineering teams are approaching change management. After that, I'll pass the mic to Amaresh, who will present on how all of this work is shaping what we're building and provide a glimpse into some of the upcoming product work. So what is the state of change management? We talk to all kinds of organizations, from small startups to large enterprises, and different teams across those organizations, developers, operations, and other stakeholders, to understand how they're handling change management. And certain themes came up again and again. But before we share those themes, I think it's important to define what we mean by change management, because those words can have slightly different meanings in different contexts. In this case, it's about achieving intended outcomes from adding, modifying, or removing anything that could have an effect on services. So that's the what of change management, and the why is all about reducing incidents. So that sounds like fun, right? That's why my teammate actually calls change management the eat your veggies of ITSM. Because just as we all know that eating our veggies is important for getting nutrients, there is plenty of good reason to practice change management, namely the need to coordinate between sometimes misaligned teams and to meet regulatory requirements. Of course, we also know that those greens are often unappetizing looking. And it's not unlike the often bitter process of navigating complex and bureaucratic change management processes. So that leaves us with the question, how does our team mix our efforts to avoid incidents, comply with regulation, and coordinate work across siloed teams into a tastier recipe? Well, first, I'll ditch the vegetable concept for all of our sakes. And second, I'll get into the top reasons dev and ops teams find change management to be so painful. We all know that teamwork is difficult. Different groups have different priorities. Sometimes shipping fast seems at odds with reliability. And even if they're well-intentioned, current change management processes and solutions often just make the pain feel worse. Time and time again, we heard complaints about these common themes around change management. First, it's slow. A team might build something and then have to wait a really long time for it to make its way to approval. It often involves a process that brings in people who are really removed from the original work. And this is especially problematic in the dynamic environment we're all operating in, where providing a superior customer experience is a key differentiator. Change management is also often work-intensive and manual. A lot of orgs require people to input redundant information into different tools. Sometimes it's in tools they don't want to work in, and sometimes the process is even imposed on the smallest, most inconsequential changes. And finally, change management is risky. A consequence of a change can be really staggering, and an incident can take down a business. Sometimes it's also difficult to gauge just how risky a change is. And then you layer the current events on top of these pains, and it all just feels worse. This is a photo I took on an evening walk last week during what would have normally been a high traffic rush hour on a San Francisco highway. To me, it's a reminder that the ways we're working have changed drastically and quickly, and the road forward is uncertain. There's all sorts of new challenges with remote work. For some of us, those are getting our remote technology set up. It's also just really weird to not be able to get in a room and collaborate with your coworkers. And on top of all of that, market volatility makes it more difficult for organizations to plan for the future. All of these things lend themselves to the question, what should be happening to our projects in these circumstances? And we've heard stories about companies that are imposing change freezes, requiring senior managers to sign off on every change request, and otherwise reverting to heavyweight process and response. We think that's a bad idea. And the research on the topic is clear. Heavyweight process doesn't help. According to the 2019 State of DevOps report, heavyweight change process has a negative impact on software delivery performance. The report also found no evidence to show that a more formal approval process was associated with lower change fail rates. And finally, to add insult to injury, heavyweight change process introduces potential for more risk with slower, less frequent, larger releases. But there's more. The State of DevOps report also took a look at high and low performing organizations. They found that the highest performing organizations, represented by the green numbers above, deploy frequently. On the other hand, the 56% of lower maturity organizations in red actually have a higher rate of change failures and take a longer time to recover from those failures. So they're both slower and worse. Don't stop deploying. And don't let heavyweight change management process get in the way. We realize this is a challenging time, but it's also a potentially transformational moment. At Atlassian, we think this is an opportunity to test and, if necessary, improve our practices. Let's get into how we're doing that here. I recently kicked off a project aiming to understand and document how various teams at Atlassian are practicing change management. So far, we've interviewed DevOps and ITSM experts, as well as members of our engineering management teams. These leaders have broad responsibility around here, including overseeing infrastructure and platform services, Atlassian server products, and managing the technical teams behind products like Jira, Bitbucket, Statuspage, and OpsGenie. But why should you take our word for it? Well, Atlassian started as two recent college grads, a team of two guys, managing a very lean startup. And today we have thousands of employees, including a global team of many developers who are writing code and releasing software changes multiple times a day, every day, and now doing it from home. Atlassian engineering leaders have seen firsthand just how important it is to have a combination of the right culture, practices, and tools to deliver valuable products to our customers. So, there are 5 core principles Atlassian engineering teams follow as they practice change management. The first, and perhaps the most important principle, comes down to culture. Culture is important at Atlassian, and the way we work is in line with the AGILE ethos. The first value in the AGILE manifesto is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. At Atlassian, we always value people and the team first. And that's because processes and tools can break easily, interfere with any one piece, and the whole system can collapse. Relationships, on the other hand, endure. In fact, they can actually become stronger under stress. Focus on the people first, and then figure out how your process and tools can help them be more effective. In many traditional approaches, change management relies on planned CAB meetings. Communication there is scheduled and may require specific structured content. But now that much of the world is working remotely, these regular, formal, in-person CAB meetings are no longer feasible. We think that if we focus on enabling people and teams first, communication around change management can be more fluid, and conversation should just be happening when the need arises. The good news is that there are all sorts of ways to communicate now. Of course, there's Zoom and there's Confluence, and plenty of other ways to keep in touch. Many of our teams have long been using Slack channels for managing certain infrastructure changes. When a change with a certain amount of risk is deployed, the team watches other important Slack channels where they might see activity that can help them reduce potential time to detection and customer impact. The team is choosing tools that enable them to stay on top of their work and communicate in the style that they prefer. And it's definitely helping them as we're all remote right now. Another Agile value prioritizes collaboration over negotiation. In other frameworks, requirements are negotiated in great detail prior to a project beginning. There isn't room to bring relevant stakeholders into the work as it proceeds, and we think this harms the outcome of the effort. Atlassian is all about working collaboratively. And our open approach to work supports that collaboration. It helps disparate teams understand each other, makes information more easily accessible, and makes it easier to bring in new ideas and feedback. An open approach informs how we manage projects. For instance, Confluence pages are set open by default, and our change plans are always collaborative documents that bring together stakeholders throughout the process. This is literally helping to keep everyone on the same page about change plans as we work remotely and often asynchronously. Another Agile value is responding to change over sticking to a plan. At its core, Agile methodologies are about adapting, and these days we're all getting a crash course in that. Traditional software development approaches regard change as an expense to be avoided. We don't think that's realistic. You should expect things to go off course and to improve them as you go. An Atlassian engineering leader also emphasized that it's critical to remember just how dynamic the environment we work in is now. He explained that there's a fallacy that you can just leave a system and code alone and expect things to stay stable. It's not true. There are network changes and OS updates, and of course situations like the current one. If you prepare for changes, you can adapt. At Atlassian, we prepare and verify systems continuously through mechanisms including war games, chaos engineering practices, and others to make sure that our systems are resilient. The second principle Atlassian engineering follows in our change management practice is about opting for autonomy rather than deferring to authority. This is especially important these days, as we've heard stories recently about organizations responding to the shift to remote work and market uncertainty by requiring senior-level managers to be involved in every change approval. This creates a bottleneck, which, as we mentioned before, doesn't lead to better outcomes. At Atlassian, everyone in engineering practices change management. It sounds simple, but it's effective. To build upon what I was saying before about Atlassian valuing open approaches to work, one of our company values is open company, no bullshit. It's a straightforward way of saying that we communicate openly and we challenge directly. Rather than deferring to distant authorities to sign off, we take ownership, which enables swift decision-making while providing clear accountability and expectations. In practice, our engineering teams use a daily release review process to help determine the risk of a change and share ownership amongst those rolling out changes. This has allowed us to keep our pace of delivery even as we face disruptive events. To be clear, daily release review is not like an approval step. Rather than delegating decisions to a cab, the daily release review brings subject matter experts together to ask relevant questions. It helps us to uncover blind spots and prompts us to think so that the person rolling out a change can make an informed decision about their approach. And this approach is highly regarded by both ITIL and DevOps practitioners. ITIL 4 acknowledges that peer review predicts high performance, and the State of DevOps report in 2019 suggested shifting left and using more peer review to optimize the development process. The next principle is about baking change management into existing workflows. We think it's possible to transform change management from an annoying requirement into a practice that is seamlessly incorporated into your work. These days, many of us have more tasks to take care of, at work and at home. And at Atlassian, we're always looking for ways to streamline and make our lives easier. First, change management should start at the beginning of a project. All too often, engineering teams look at change management as a step near the end of their workflow. It's basically the final obstacle standing between their work and delivering a valuable update to the customer. Troy DeMolin from Pink Elephant recently used an aviation metaphor to explain the problem of delegating change management responsibilities to a cab at the end of a project. Imagine the cab is a control tower at an airport. That control tower has one job: tell the planes when they are clear to land. It would never be tasked with assessing whether the planes are structurally safe or whether the pilot has the right credentials, because those factors are already confirmed by the FAA and other authorities. We shouldn't wait until right before the plane is about to land to approve it, and we shouldn't wait till a change is about to land to approve it. At Atlassian, our change management process starts from the very beginning, from ticket creation, even before writing code. We start thinking about risk management, identify how we're going to roll out changes effectively, and what mechanisms we would use. We ask questions like, do we need to feature flag this change or not? And what's the ideal soaking period? And what are the considerations on how to test or roll it out? This makes changes a lot less risky and easier to roll out. Another thing we do to streamline change management is to make changes as traceable and transparent as possible. We don't want this to be about jumping through hoops, and we don't want people to avoid change management. We want it to feel like a helpful, natural part of their work. That's why traceability is so important in our practice. In an ideal world, we wouldn't need to formalize updates around the changes we're making because they would be automatically tracked and transparent. At Atlassian, our teams use Jira as a single source of truth around changes. It's easy to track those involved in a change, to notify the people that need to be made aware of a change, and to associate a change with related issues. Another important thing to call out here comes down to technology and automation. I recently had a conversation with a developer who described the change management process at his company. Engineers work on code. They log their work in Jira, and when they're ready to move forward, they're required to log into a legacy system this guy didn't think too highly of. There they submit a change request that involves a tediously long form. The change process then involves a distant approver and can take quite a long time. And then, before the change gets deployed, the information about the change has to be manually updated again in multiple systems. It's just not ideal. So a bit later, Amaresh is going to show how we're building Jira Service Desk to improve upon those types of painful experiences. Now, regardless of the tools you use, smart workflow, automation, and agile processes are beneficial, even in the most heavily regulated industries, when you add sensible rules and thresholds to existing processes. An Atlassian leader shared that he has used automation to enable segregation of duties. For example, if a change meets certain criteria, say 2 people have signed off on a code change via a pull request, it can be used as a sign-off for compliance. And of course, we also rely on tools and automation for reassurance as we roll out a change. We know our products are working as expected in all regions and all environments via monitoring, anomaly detection, and alerting. We keep this as automatic as possible, so when something goes wrong, the failure shows up and triggers an alert. So all of that automation, traceability, and monitoring talk actually transitions really nicely into our next core principle, which is test and iterate. All the data that we're gathering is really important to our culture of testing, learning, and adapting as we roll out changes. We test and iterate because even though CI/CD sounds amazing, the reality is that it's difficult to be 100% sure about how something in a master code branch is going to work out in production. This is why we use progressive deploys, the canary or feature flag, with a small subset of users to test and prove stability before the full deployment. One of the core goals for our engineering leadership team is to make it easy for engineers to deploy to production, and they need to do that in a way that's balancing being safe and being fast. And we've had to make some changes around that in the past. For example, for some products, we used to deploy to all regions at the same time, but we realized that a breaking change could bring every region down, and the customer impact of that would be very bad. So now we deploy in stages. On that note, our engineering leadership looks to things like blast radius to balance safe and fast deployments. We can move fast when a customer impact would be small if something goes wrong, because change management is all about avoiding incidents. Now, despite these reports we've heard about some companies slowing their change management practice down as we've gone remote, it's just as important as ever to stay on top of the backlog, because we don't want to allow our releases to get too large. Too many changes launched at once can cause a major incident and make it hard to identify the root cause. At Atlassian, we're sticking with smaller, more frequent releases that limit the scope of a potential incident. So I'll say it once again, Don't stop deploying. And the final principle for today, and I think a really good one to close on, is about always striving to improve. There is plenty of room for continuous improvement in change management, but unfortunately, many teams are still taking a one-size-fits-all approach to changes. At Atlassian, we're leveraging data to handle different changes with an appropriate level of rigor for each change. All the data we can track around changes, the individuals involved, the services that are affected, the links to incidents can help us to make better decisions about the risk around future changes. We're working to automatically and instantly approve more and more changes that we assess as low risk. To use ITIL terms, standard changes can become the new normal or pre-approved changes. This can help us to reduce the backlog faster and to deliver value to customers more rapidly. Now we have to call out here that a foundational part of any plan to improve is to have a good picture of the current state of affairs. As part of our change management practice, we collect data on reliability, cost, security, scalability, and other metrics. There are also other, more qualitative measures of success. Our leadership looks to things like developer satisfaction following a big project. All of this measurement makes it easier to prioritize areas for improvement. Now, in traditional change and release management processes, too much effort has been expended on administering tedious approvals and project management tasks. Change management should become more strategic, and at Atlassian, we try to use it to optimize, figure out what can be automated, which tools can help, and how the team can work more effectively together. In the days ahead, we'll certainly be paying special attention to all of these metrics to assess the impact of current events on the health of our practices. There you have it, the 5 principles Atlassian engineers rely on in their approach to change management. Embracing an agile culture, opting for autonomy over authority, streamlining change management into existing workflows, testing and iterating, and always striving to improve. That's a lot, and we know firsthand that this stuff isn't easy. So we hope you found some of these insights helpful. And now I'd like to pass the controls over to my teammate, Amaresh Ray. He'll walk through how we're building a modern change management solution that's inspired by these practices and designed to address the slow, manual, risky, and unfortunately painful current state of many change management practices.
Thanks, Blythe. I'm Amresh, and I'm a product manager at Atlassian. I've been with Atlassian and Jira Service Desk for nearly 3 years, and it's been really exciting to see how customers are using our tools to streamline their work and to really make it more enjoyable and efficient. Blythe's been discussing principles for practicing change management from both the DevOps and ITSM angles. And though many argue that these movements are at odds and see Dev and Ops teams as opposites in approach, we're actually optimistic about helping them work together more effectively. We're addressing underlying change management pains so that in one system, changes can go through faster, be automatically tracked, and the workflow adapts based on the data. All of this makes the teams better aligned and improves their ability to work towards a common business objective. It's no secret that these two personas have had traditionally misaligned incentives. Developers want to deliver value to customers faster, whereas Ops is responsible for ensuring reliability for the business. Ops wants to make sure that the changes people are making are being carried out in a safe and compliant manner. The shift to remote work due to COVID-19 has actually increased this tension. We spoke to a large supermarket chain in Australia who said that their ops team is under severe pressure to keep things stable during this time as online orders have increased. While at the same time, their development teams have to keep innovating and delivering new solutions to address adapting customer needs. But it doesn't have to be that way. What I'm going to show you today is how using Jira Service Desk, we can help you accelerate software delivery while managing risk and maintaining compliance. So let's take a look at some of the investments we've made to remove some of that friction between dev and IT and speed up the process of creating change requests, assessing the risk of the change, automating approvals, and deploying changes into production. We know that development teams love having autonomy over the tools they're using, so we're thrilled to announce new integrations between popular CI/CD tools such as Bitbucket Pipelines, Jenkins, Circle CI, and Octopus Deploy with Jira Service Desk. Lots of development teams fear having to raise change tickets, as it's an onerous process to create those tickets. Ops teams, at the same time, struggle with coordinating and communicating those changes due to an over-reliance on email, which often means that they lack full visibility. Now, with this new integration, these CI/CD tools can automatically create a change request in Jira Service Desk to reduce that back and forth. And with the new risk assessment engine, which is powered by automation for Jira, uh, you can quickly score the risk and determine if it's a low risk change that can be auto approved and deployed, or if it's a high risk change that requires further approvals. Now, the beauty of all this is that it unblocks your development team while still giving IT ops a complete audit trail of the changes deployed in one place in Jira Service Desk. It makes it easier for IT ops to be a true partner to your DevOps team. There's no more finger pointing or waiting days on end for a simple change to make it all the way through. You get that much needed agility while minimizing risk. But what happens when you have a high risk change or an emergency change, like the one highlighted here, that requires further approval? Well, the new change management issue view in Jira Service Desk pulls together all the information your change manager needs to decide whether to approve the change or not, all in one view, including information about the tool coming directly from your CI/CD tool, the affected services and its dependencies on other services, the risk score from the risk engine, and who needs to approve that change. So your developers can track the progress of the request right from their CI/CD tool, and there's no more context switching. And once the change is approved, your service desk automatically ungates deployment for your DevOps team and pushes that change into production. That's what's really unique about our approach to change management. By putting dev and IT on the same platform, we're able to automate that last mile that's so essential for responding to business changes fast. This is still a work in progress, and we want to share this with our customers early so we can use your feedback to make sure we build something that's really useful for you. We also know that there's a ton more for us to do here. As modern development becomes more and more fast-paced, we want to provide an approach that's relevant for handling those dynamic cloud environments. We want to help teams needing to implement change control with configuration changes, doing things like managing releases through feature flags. So thank you so much for attending the webinar today, and we really hope it was helpful, and we want to wish you all the best to you and your teams. If you're interested in trying out Jira Service Desk, it's available for free, and the link is included in the webinar resources. We've also included a link so you can test drive these early features. We'd love to hear what you think about them and your change management experience more generally. You can contact us using the form in the link resources.